Welcome to Zoe Stories. From desk to diva, the office party makeover. The office lights hummed quietly, casting a dull glow over rows of cubicles. Amidst the monotony, Ethan sat at his desk, fingers hovering over the keyboard, eyes darting nervously toward the clock. A report due tomorrow shouldn't be this stressful, yet Ethan's mind wasn't on deadlines. He was thinking about something far more thrilling and far more dangerous. By day, Ethan was a typical corporate analyst, efficient, polite, slightly reserved. He knew the routine, the unspoken rules of office life, the small chatter by the coffee machine, the polite nods in the elevator. But when the doors closed behind him and the office emptied into the night, Ethan's secret life began, a life that demanded caution, creativity, and a delicate balance of risk. For Ethan, crossdressing wasn't a costume or a passing whim. It was an exploration of identity, a personal rebellion wrapped in silk and lace. It was exhilarating, intoxicating, and terrifying all at once. He wasn't someone who could casually flaunt it. His girlfriend Isabella knew only fragments, carefully curated snapshots of his softer side, a teasing comment here, or a playful wink there, never the full truth. The thought of her returning home early tonight made his pulse quicken. Isabella, with her sharp intuition and effortless style, would notice every detail, every change, every shift in his demeanor. And tonight, Ethan had a plan that would push boundaries further than ever before. His apartment reflected the dichotomy of his life. On one side, neat stacks of reports, a laptop open to spreadsheets, pens aligned like soldiers. On the other, a small corner transformed into a private atelier, racks of delicate dresses, shoes perched like trophies, palettes of makeup lined up meticulously. Each item told a story of secret indulgence, of moments when Ethan could fully inhabit the persona he longed to explore. Tonight's plan was audacious, an office party, a gathering that promised laughter, networking, and the usual tedium, but Ethan had an agenda. He would attend not as the conservative analyst everyone knew, but as a dazzling, confident woman, someone who could command attention with every step, every glance. The thrill was irresistible, but so was the risk. One wrong move, one accidental glance from a coworker who knew too much, and everything could unravel. Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he reached for a soft, crimson dress, elegant but understated, a perfect balance of boldness and subtlety. The fabric slipped through his fingers like silk, a promise of transformation. He held it close, imagining the reflection in the mirror, himself, yet entirely someone else. There was a quiet power in this duality, a secret strength that surged with every accessory chosen, every brushstroke applied. Isabella's voice, faint in his memory, echoed in his mind. "You'd look amazing if you just let yourself," she had said once, teasing yet sincere, unaware of how deep Ethan's curiosity ran. That encouragement had been enough to spark countless late-night sessions of trial and experimentation. Yet, tonight felt different. Tonight, he wasn't testing boundaries in private, he was crossing them in public. He paused, glancing at his reflection in the full-length mirror. The man staring back at him was tense, eyes shadowed with anticipation. But beneath the nerves was excitement, a fluttering heartbeat of daring possibility. Tonight, Ethan would become someone unforgettable. The clock ticked closer to the time when Isabella would likely leave for her evening engagement, and the thrill of secrecy tightened around him like a silk ribbon. Every second brought the risk of being discovered, every noise outside the apartment, a neighbor's footsteps, a distant siren, felt magnified. Ethan swallowed hard, reminding himself, the transformation wasn't just physical, it was emotional, psychological. He would step into a persona that demanded courage, charisma, and unflinching confidence. As he began to prepare, selecting shoes, adjusting makeup, and fastening the delicate dress, memories flashed of previous small victories, moments when he had dared to slip into femininity, even for a brief hour, and felt an intoxicating freedom. But this was different. Tonight, it wasn't just about feeling beautiful in private. Tonight, It was about commanding a space that had always felt restrictive, about daring to be seen. Ethan's pulse raced as he took the final step, positioning a wig carefully, adjusting it to frame his face perfectly. The mirror reflected a woman poised, confident, magnetic. Yet, beneath the surface, a storm of anxiety churned. Could he maintain the illusion under the gaze of others? Would Isabella's intuition sense the shift before he even left the apartment? The apartment door clicked gently, a sound that made him freeze. Not Isabella, yet, but the anticipation of her possible return sent a shiver down his spine. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs as he took a deep breath. Tonight, the line between fantasy and reality would blur, and nothing could prepare him for the thrill or the danger that lay ahead. With one final glance at his reflection, Ethan whispered to himself, a mixture of fear and excitement. Time to step into her shoes, literally. And with that, he took a slow, deliberate step toward the night, toward transformation, toward a world where he could finally be the diva he had always imagined, even if only for a few stolen hours. The city lights flickered outside Ethan's apartment window as he carefully stepped back from the mirror. The transformation had begun, but the real challenge was just starting. He felt the silky dress against his skin, smooth and cool, a constant reminder of the persona he was about to inhabit. The heels, perched elegantly by the rug, seemed like a trap, dainty, beautiful, yet capable of toppling him at the slightest misstep. His reflection was mesmerizing. Not the Ethan everyone at work knew, the quiet analyst who never spoke unless spoken to, but someone bolder, radiant, entirely captivating. He tilted his head, testing the wig, adjusting a stray strand, and smiled at the person in the mirror. It was intoxicating to see this confident, feminine version of himself staring back, daring him to step into the unknown. Yet, beneath the thrill, a shadow of doubt lingered. What if someone saw him before he left? Isabella's schedule was unpredictable, and the idea of her returning unexpectedly tightened his chest. The thrill of being caught, however, sent a shiver of excitement down his spine, a dangerous, thrilling duality that made every second feel alive. Ethan approached the makeup carefully, each stroke deliberate. Foundation, blush, eyeliner, each layer blurred the line between his male and female selves. He had practiced this transformation countless times, yet every time it felt like the first, an intimate, vulnerable dance between who he was and who he wanted to be. A soft brush of lip gloss and he paused, biting his lip nervously, staring at the reflection of a woman who seemed more real than he expected. He stepped into the heels, feeling the unfamiliar balance shift beneath him. The sound of his own movement, the click of polished toes against hardwood, sounded foreign, yet thrilling. With every step, he felt a surge of confidence, a subtle but undeniable power that made him stand taller, stand prouder. The mirror reflected a transformation not just in appearance, but in spirit. Suddenly, a sound from outside the apartment froze him. A knock, soft yet deliberate. His heart raced.
Who could that be?
A neighbor? Or worse, someone he knew? Panic flared, and he instinctively pressed himself against the wall, holding his breath. The knock came again, more insistent. Ethan's mind raced. He couldn't answer the door like this, not without risking everything. He debated quickly, weighing options, fingers trembling. Could he duck into the bathroom and change back? Or was that too risky, drawing attention to the apartment? Every second stretched, taut with suspense, his heartbeat echoing in his ears like a drum. The knocking stopped. Ethan exhaled shakily, trying to calm himself. But the adrenaline coursing through him made his body buzz with both anxiety and anticipation. This, he realized, was part of the thrill, the tension of secrecy, the constant awareness that a single mistake could unravel everything. He glanced again at the mirror. Tonight wasn't just about looking beautiful. It was about commanding presence, owning confidence, and testing the boundaries of his secret life. He practiced walking, turning, and posing, each movement fluid, yet deliberate, imagining the office party crowd seeing this dazzling version of himself. The anticipation, the fear, the exhilaration, It all blended into a heady mix that made him feel more alive than he had in years. His thoughts briefly turned to Isabella. She was the anchor in his chaotic double life, the one person whose opinion mattered most. What would she think if she saw him like this?
Proud?
Shocked? Perhaps even intrigued? The possibilities made him both nervous and eager. He reminded himself that tonight was temporary, a private rebellion before returning to the familiar world. Yet the line between temporary and permanent blurred slightly in his mind, each transformation making him question who he truly wanted to be. The sound of his phone buzzing pulled him from his thoughts. A text from Isabella. Running late tonight. Don't wait up. Have fun. Relief flooded him, quickly followed by renewed excitement. This was his moment, the window he had been waiting for. Alone, free, with no one to judge, Ethan could fully embrace the transformation, explore every nuance of being someone else entirely. He adjusted the dress one last time, straightening the seams and smoothing the fabric over his hips. The heels felt less precarious now, a symbol of his growing confidence. Each movement was deliberate, calculated, yet laced with excitement. He picked up a small clutch, checking to ensure it contained everything he needed: the lipstick, the compact, a small mirror. Every detail mattered. Every prop reinforced the illusion he was about to bring to life. Standing in the center of the room, Ethan took a deep breath. The city outside glittered with possibilities, a backdrop to the night that awaited. He felt the thrill of transformation pulsing through him, a mix of fear, desire, and exhilaration. This was more than dressing up. It was stepping into a persona that allowed him to explore forbidden desires, to taste the freedom of visibility, and to test his own courage. The doorbell rang again, startling him. This time, he froze entirely, heart hammering in his chest. Was it Isabella? Or worse, a nosy neighbor? Every instinct screamed to hide, yet part of him wanted to confront the risk head-on. It was a test, not just of his disguise, but of his courage, his nerve, his willingness to embrace the thrill of secrecy. Ethan's eyes flicked to the mirror one last time. The reflection was mesmerizing, the confident, radiant woman staring back, every detail perfect. He knew that tonight would push him further than he had ever gone before, and the stakes had never been higher. His breath hitched, excitement and fear mingling in a heady cocktail, and he whispered to himself, "This is it. No turning back." Ethan's apartment hummed with a quiet intensity as he continued his preparation. The city outside remained oblivious to the drama unfolding behind closed doors, yet inside, every heartbeat, every breath, felt magnified. Tonight wasn't just another night. It was a test of courage, a performance of self-expression, and a daring flirtation with danger. He glanced once more at the mirror, adjusting the wig with meticulous care. Soft curls framed his face perfectly, the subtle shimmer of eyeshadow accentuating his almond-shaped eyes. He applied the final layer of lipstick, a deep, enticing red that made him feel simultaneously powerful and vulnerable. The reflection was no longer Ethan hiding in plain sight. It was a woman radiating confidence, someone ready to command attention without hesitation. But confidence didn't erase fear. Ethan's mind raced with scenarios: a coworker spotting him before the party, Isabella returning home unexpectedly, the horrifying idea of slipping on his heels in front of someone he didn't know. Each thought made his pulse quicken, each possibility a thrill-laced dagger of anxiety. He reminded himself, this was a risk he chose, a thrill he craved, a secret adventure hidden beneath the veneer of his everyday life. The heels clicked against the floor as he paced the small space, practicing movements, turns, and postures that felt natural yet undeniably feminine. He experimented with subtle gestures, a tilt of the head, a flick of the wrist, a coy glance in the mirror. Every motion was deliberate, a rehearsal for the night ahead. It wasn't just about looking the part, it was about embodying it completely. His thoughts wandered to the office party. Normally, such gatherings were mundane affairs: stale punch, awkward small talk, forced networking. But tonight, the party was transformed into a stage, a playground where Ethan could explore his daring persona. He imagined the reactions of colleagues who had only ever seen him as a quiet, reserved man. The thrill of subverting expectations made him shiver with anticipation. As he gathered accessories, a clutch, a subtle necklace, delicate earrings, he felt a surge of exhilaration. Each item was more than decoration. It was a symbol, a tool of transformation. The soft brush of fabric against his skin, the weight of the clutch in his hand, the gentle sway of the dress as he moved, all of it reminded him that tonight, he would not just attend a party. He would perform, reveal, and embrace a hidden part of himself. Yet, the suspense of discovery remained ever present. A soft vibration from his phone startled him. It was a reminder from a coworker about the party's start time. Ethan's stomach fluttered. The world outside was moving forward, and soon he would be immersed in a social space where any misstep could expose his secret. The thought made his palms sweat, yet his heart thudded with excitement. He was teetering on the edge of thrill and fear, and the rush was addictive. He took a deep breath, centering himself. Tonight was about more than just physical transformation. It was about internal metamorphosis, the courage to step into vulnerability, to risk embarrassment for the sheer exhilaration of authenticity. Every ounce of hesitation, every flicker of doubt, was a reminder of how alive he felt in this dual existence. The clock crept closer to the hour. Ethan checked his reflection one final time before leaving the apartment. The woman in the mirror seemed to smile back knowingly, a silent affirmation of the journey he was about to undertake. He slipped on his heels, feeling the delicate balance shift beneath him, each step a small act of daring. He practiced walking, pivoting, and pausing, ensuring his movements were fluid, confident, mesmerizing. As he gathered his courage, Ethan thought about Isabella. She had always been a source of quiet support, her teasing words and subtle encouragements igniting curiosity and self-discovery. What would she think if she knew how far he was willing to go tonight? The question lingered, mingling with excitement and fear, a constant undertone of suspense that kept his senses sharp. Stepping toward the door, he paused. The city beyond promised freedom, anonymity, and risk. Ethan's heartbeat quickened, the thrill of stepping into a world that had no rules for him fueling every nerve. He could feel the tension coiling in his chest, a mixture of anticipation and apprehension that made every breath taste electric. With one last glance at the mirror, he whispered, almost to himself, "No one knows me like this yet." It was a declaration, a promise, and a warning. Tonight, he would be seen, noticed, admired, or perhaps questioned. The unknown loomed large, and that uncertainty was the most intoxicating part of all. He opened the door, heels clicking softly on the hardwood floor, and stepped out into the night. The city seemed to pulse in time with his own heartbeat, each light a spotlight, each shadow a reminder of the secret he carried. Ethan was no longer merely going to a party. He was entering a world of potential, suspense, and transformation, where every glance, every word, every movement carried weight. And somewhere deep inside, a whisper of thrill curled around him, promising that once he crossed this threshold, there would be no turning back. Not until he decided the night was over. Every step forward was a step further into his persona, into the intoxicating mix of power, vulnerability, and audacious desire that only this dual life could provide. The city evening was alive with movement, streetlights reflecting off rain-slicked pavement as Ethan navigated the crowded sidewalk. Each step in his heels was a careful negotiation, a test of balance and poise. Around him, strangers moved in indifferent streams, oblivious to the transformation he carried with him. But for Ethan, every glance felt like a potential exposure, a threat mingled with exhilaration. He clutched a small clutch tightly, the weight grounding him as much as it reminded him of his daring choice. The dress hugged his form perfectly, the fabric swaying slightly with each stride. It wasn't just a dress, it was armor, a declaration, a way to occupy space he usually felt invisible in. He had practiced this walk countless times in private, but walking through a bustling city street, visible to anyone who might glance, was different. Each step sent adrenaline surging through him. A group of young professionals passed by, their laughter cutting through the ambient noise. Ethan felt a flicker of fear. Did they notice him? Would one of them turn back, make a comment, point, whisper? The tension twisted in his stomach, yet alongside it was an undeniable thrill. Being seen, even anonymously, gave him power. He was performing without a stage, thrilling without an audience who fully understood, yet fully aware of himself. As he approached the glass doors of the office building, Ethan paused. Reflected in the shiny surface was the woman he had become, confident, radiant, and daring. He straightened his posture, adjusted his hair, and ran his fingers lightly over the neckline of his dress. This reflection, so public yet separate from the world inside, was a reminder of how far he had come from the quiet analyst who had walked these halls every morning. The lobby was surprisingly empty, only the cleaning staff moving quietly in the far corner. Ethan's heels clicked against the polished floor, each sound louder than it should have been in the vast space. He felt every vibration, every echo, as if the building itself was aware of the secret he carried. He took a deep breath, feeling the shift inside him, the exhilaration of stepping into public life as someone entirely different, yet fully himself. He paused near the elevator, checking his reflection in the mirrored wall. The subtle shimmer of eyeshadow, the curve of his lipstick, the confident sway of his shoulders, everything aligned perfectly. But the reflection also reminded him of the stakes. One misstep, one slip, and the illusion could crumble. And unlike the privacy of his home, here there were witnesses, even if fleeting, to his transformation. When the elevator doors opened, Ethan hesitated for just a second, then stepped in, pressing the button for the party floor. A few other passengers entered, giving him curious glances. He smiled politely, fingers tightening around the clutch. The glances didn't disturb him, they fueled him. This was the world he longed to navigate, a space where he could be both vulnerable and powerful, exposed yet entirely confident. Inside the elevator, he imagined the reactions awaiting him. Colleagues who had only seen him as quiet and professional would now encounter someone dazzling, magnetic, impossible to ignore. The thought sent shivers down his spine, a mix of fear, anticipation, and uncontainable excitement. He rehearsed his posture, the tilt of his head, the subtle arch of his back. Every movement was intentional, a silent message of confidence and allure. When the doors opened, the hallway was brightly lit, the soft hum of music and chatter already leaking through the large doors at the end of the corridor. Ethan's pulse quickened. Every step toward the party felt like a heartbeat in a symphony of suspense. The polished floors reflected his image, creating a double vision of daring and tension. He felt the thrill of approaching the threshold of his performance, where every glance could be measured, every word could be scrutinized. He paused for a brief moment at the entrance, taking in the scene inside. Laughter, chatter, clusters of people holding glasses of wine, animated conversations bridging small groups. Ethan's heart raced with both fear and exhilaration. He wasn't just entering a room. He was stepping onto a stage where the stakes were intensely personal. His secret, his daring transformation, hung invisibly around him like a thread over a precipice. With a final deep breath, he straightened his posture, adjusted the hem of his dress, and stepped into the room. All eyes were not on him, yet, but he could feel the subtle shifts, the faint glances, the murmurs that followed as the party's rhythm continued around him. Every heartbeat, every breath, every step was now part of the suspenseful dance he had created. Ethan was no longer the man who entered this building that morning. He was a bold, radiant figure commanding space in a world where every glance carried potential discovery, thrill, and excitement. The party buzzed with energy, laughter, and music mixing into a low, constant hum. Ethan moved carefully through the crowd, heels clicking softly on the polished floor, each step a statement of poise and confidence. He could feel eyes grazing him, some curious, some admiring, but none yet suspicious. Every glance was a thrill, a test of his ability to maintain control over the persona he had created. Clusters of coworkers chatted in animated groups. He recognized faces, some nodding politely as he passed. They didn't know him like this. To them, he was someone new, someone radiant, alluring, impossible to ignore. The adrenaline pumped through his veins, making each movement deliberate and elegant. Every sway of the dress, every tilt of his head, felt like a secret performance, a quiet rebellion hidden in plain sight. A group of women turned as he approached, smiles flickering across their faces. Ethan forced a casual smile, keeping his voice soft yet confident. "Hi," he said, the word carrying a warmth and charm he rarely felt in his everyday persona. Their friendly nods and polite laughter stoked both his confidence and his anxiety. He couldn't let any of them suspect the truth, couldn't let a slip of the tongue or a nervous gesture undo hours of careful preparation. He moved toward the refreshments, the gentle clink of glasses blending with laughter. He poured himself a drink, hands steady, and tried to blend into the rhythm of the party. But every interaction carried weight. Every word spoken was measured, every laugh slightly rehearsed. The thrill of deception mingled with genuine excitement, the intoxicating mix of being noticed and admired, while simultaneously hiding a truth only he knew. As he stood near a group of colleagues discussing the latest company project, Ethan's internal conflict bubbled to the surface. He felt a shiver of fear imagining Isabella walking in at that moment, catching him like this. The idea of discovery tightened his chest, but alongside it was an undeniable rush of exhilaration. How many people had he passed without recognition, without suspicion? And yet, each passing moment reminded him that exposure was possible, always lingering, like a shadow waiting to strike. He laughed politely at a joke, mimicking the casual gestures of the women around him, and felt a flicker of triumph. He was performing convincingly, blending perfectly into a space where he normally would feel invisible. The thrill of transformation wasn't just about looks, it was about presence, control, and daring to inhabit a persona that commanded attention. A coworker approached, a tall man from the analytics team, known for his sharp eyes and blunt observations. "You look different tonight," he said, voice tinged with curiosity. Ethan froze for a heartbeat, then smiled, tilting his head slightly. "Thanks," he said smoothly, heart hammering. The comment, harmless as it was, sent a jolt through him. Every word, every glance, felt like a test of his ability to sustain the illusion. Moving away, Ethan sought a quieter corner, a place where he could observe the party without drawing too much attention. He sipped his drink slowly, heart racing, watching reactions. Whispers and smiles followed him, subtle yet unmistakable. The realization hit him with both thrill and panic. He was captivating, commanding attention, yet vulnerable to exposure at every moment. Each glance felt like a balancing act between exhilaration and fear, visibility and secrecy. Then came the unexpected, a familiar voice behind him, smooth and teasing. Well, look who's taking the party by storm." Ethan froze, slowly turning. It was Melissa, a colleague he had always respected for her style and intuition. Her eyes narrowed playfully, a hint of recognition in her gaze. "You look amazing," she said, with a tone that was equal parts curiosity and amusement. Ethan's pulse spiked. Could she sense something different? Did she suspect? He smiled, forcing casual confidence. "Thanks. Thought I'd try something new tonight." Every word, every gesture, was a calculated risk. He needed to maintain control, to deflect suspicion while enjoying the thrill of attention. Melissa tilted her head, studying him, and Ethan felt a flicker of panic. Yet there was no accusation, only intrigue. "Well, it's bold," she said finally, with a teasing smirk. Ethan laughed softly, relieved, and the conversation shifted to safe, mundane topics. But the spike of fear lingered, mingling with excitement, making every interaction feel charged with suspense. He moved through the party, observing, engaging, surviving the thrill of exposure. Each laugh, each glance, each step in his heels reinforced the duality of his night. The woman he had become, dazzling and confident, and the man he still was, navigating risk and desire with trembling hands. The balance was precarious, intoxicating, and utterly addictive. The music swelled, laughter echoed, and Ethan felt the pulse of the party intertwine with the pulse of his own heart. Each moment was a reminder that tonight, he was not merely attending a party. He was performing, daring, and embracing a truth that few would ever understand. Yet the shadow of potential discovery lingered, a constant tension beneath the glittering surface of celebration. And then, from across the room, he spotted Isabella's friend, someone who could unknowingly bridge worlds, a reminder that even in public spaces, his secret was fragile. Ethan's heart skipped. One misstep, one comment, one glance could unravel everything. The stakes of transformation had never felt higher, and the thrill of the risk was almost unbearable. The music pulsed through the room, a steady beat that seemed to echo Ethan's racing heart. He had navigated the initial scrutiny, survived casual compliments, and now the thrill of attention had begun to transform into something more electrifying and dangerous. Every step he took in his heels was measured, deliberate, yet trembling with anticipation. Each glance from coworkers felt like a spotlight, illuminating the persona he had painstakingly crafted. Ethan moved toward the center of the room, where clusters of people had begun to form a loose circle, dancing and laughing. He sipped his drink, trying to maintain a casual composure, but the weight of visibility pressed against him like an invisible force. This was no longer a quiet performance. He was fully in the spotlight, the stakes higher than ever. A single misstep could expose everything. And then, the unexpected happened. A co-worker he hadn't anticipated, James from the finance department, appeared suddenly near the refreshments table. James was known for his sharp intuition and ability to notice small details. Ethan's stomach twisted. Could he detect the secret lurking beneath the glamorous exterior? Would one casual comment reveal the truth he had so carefully concealed? James raised an eyebrow, studying Ethan with a mix of curiosity and amusement. "Wow, I didn't expect to see you like this," he said, voice low enough that it could be interpreted as either a compliment or a subtle probe. Ethan froze for a split second, then forced a smile, trying to convey casual charm. "Yeah, thought I'd mix things up tonight," he replied, heart hammering against his ribs. The moment stretched, taut with tension. Ethan's mind raced through every possible reaction, every subtle gesture that could betray him. He adjusted his posture, shifted the weight of his heels, and forced a laugh that sounded natural, even though his pulse screamed anxiety. James chuckled lightly, seemingly satisfied, and moved on, but the spark of fear lingered, electrifying Ethan's every nerve. As he navigated through the party, Ethan realized that the thrill of transformation was now inseparable from the fear of exposure. Each laugh, each glance, each compliment was charged with duality, exhilaration and vulnerability intertwined, creating a heady, intoxicating tension. He had never felt more alive or more at risk. The music swelled, and Ethan spotted a small lounge area across the room. He moved toward it, hoping for a brief respite, a place to recalibrate. But the path was crowded, filled with coworkers engaging in animated conversation. Each step required careful negotiation, heels clicking against the floor like a metronome of suspense. Every movement could draw attention. Every accidental brush against someone's arm could be a disaster or a thrill. He finally reached the lounge, taking a moment to breathe and observe. From this vantage point, he could see the party in full swing, the clusters of colleagues mingling, laughing, and dancing. Yet something caught his eye, a subtle movement near the door. A person he hadn't expected, Melissa again, this time closer, watching him intently. Ethan's chest tightened. Her gaze was not accusatory, but there was curiosity there, a hint that she was beginning to notice inconsistencies, perhaps intuitively sensing the transformation behind the glamour. Panic and exhilaration mingled, creating a storm of emotions. Ethan felt the thrill of being observed without fully understood, the excitement of attention coupled with the vulnerability of potential discovery. He adjusted his dress slightly, smoothing the fabric over his hips, and took a deliberate sip of his drink, pretending to be nonchalant. But the tension was not the only obstacle. The room seemed smaller now, the crowd denser, each movement fraught with potential exposure. A loud laugh nearby startled him, the sound ricocheting in his ears like a warning. His heels slipped slightly on the polished floor, and he caught himself with a quick step, heart racing. Every detail, every minor misstep, reminded him of the delicate balance he was maintaining. And then, the moment that truly escalated the stakes, the music slowed, and an announcement was made. The office party had a dance segment, a casual but high-profile activity meant to draw the crowd together. Ethan's heart leapt into his throat. Dancing in heels, in the spotlight, with coworkers only casually familiar with his feminine persona, it was a risk unlike any he had taken before. The crowd began to move toward the dance area, and Ethan realized he had no choice. To refuse would be suspicious. To participate could be perilous. He took a deep breath, straightened his posture, and stepped forward, each movement deliberate, each gesture an act of courage. The floor seemed to ripple beneath him as he joined the swirling crowd, adrenaline surging through every nerve. Melissa's gaze followed him, intrigued yet ambiguous, and Ethan felt a thrill so intense it was almost painful. He could feel every eye brushing past him, measuring, noting, unaware of the duality of his identity. And amidst the panic, the fear, the potential exposure, there was a heady rush. He was captivating, powerful, and undeniably alive. Every sway of his dress, every tilt of his head, every precise step in his heels was a statement. Ethan had become the diva he had envisioned, yet the tension of discovery remained, lurking like a shadow at the edge of the room. Each second was a test of control, a battle between exhilaration and anxiety, between secrecy and revelation. As the dance segment began, Ethan felt the first real taste of public exposure. He was no longer performing privately. He was part of a living, breathing audience, and the stakes had never been higher. The thrill was intoxicating, the fear palpable, and the transformation complete, but the night was far from over. The climax of suspense, the moment of potential exposure, was looming just beyond the next heartbeat. The music shifted, a dramatic, pulsing beat that filled the room and seemed to synchronize with Ethan's own heartbeat. He had been moving gracefully through the crowd, heels clicking like a metronome, drawing subtle attention without arousing suspicion. But now, the stakes escalated. The dance segment had begun, and everyone's focus was drawn toward the center of the floor. Ethan's pulse spiked. He had rehearsed this in private countless times, yet performing in front of a live audience, fully exposed, was a different reality. Every movement had to be perfect, every sway of the hips, every flick of the wrist, every glance he offered had to maintain the illusion. Failure wasn't just embarrassing, it could shatter the carefully constructed persona he had created. Melissa was there again, watching with an intensity that made his stomach tighten. There was curiosity in her eyes, a glimmer of intrigue that was impossible to ignore. She tilted her head slightly as if analyzing him, and Ethan felt a wave of panic. Did she suspect? Could she see through the facade? He stepped forward, joining the swirling dancers. His movements were calculated but fluid, each step precise. He felt the dress sway with his body, the heels pressing sharply into his feet, reminding him of the vulnerability inherent in his performance. And yet, there was exhilaration in the danger, a heady rush that made every nerve stand on edge. From the corner of his eye, he spotted James, the colleague with the sharp intuition. James' gaze lingered for a beat too long, scanning, observing. Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the hem of his dress, heart hammering. He was balancing on the knife's edge of attention and exposure, and one false move could unravel everything. Suddenly, the DJ shifted the track, and a faster rhythm took over. Ethan's body moved instinctively, adjusting to the beat. He danced with confidence, yet every glance from the crowd felt loaded with potential danger. A co-worker brushed past him, unaware of the secret Ethan carried, but the contact sent a jolt through him. He steadied himself, forcing a casual laugh and a tilt of the head, blending charm with grace. Then it happened, a misstep. His heel caught on the polished floor, a subtle stumble that could have drawn attention. Ethan froze for a heartbeat, chest tightening. But he recovered quickly, turning the stumble into part of the dance, masking vulnerability with elegance. The adrenaline surged, a mix of fear and triumph coursing through him. He had survived the first test of public exposure, but he knew the night was far from over. Melissa's gaze met his again, closer this time. She stepped forward, approaching with a confident, teasing smile. "You're really something," she said softly, voice low enough to intrigue without accusing. Ethan swallowed, forcing a composed smile. "Thanks," he replied, voice steady despite the rush of panic and excitement. The crowd moved around them, oblivious to the tension between the two. Yet for Ethan, every heartbeat felt magnified. The thrill of being noticed, admired, and yet potentially discovered was intoxicating. He adjusted his posture, keeping shoulders back, chin high, heels balanced, and continued dancing, moving seamlessly through the crowd. Then came the unexpected twist, a loud, sudden announcement over the microphone. "Time for a quick game. Volunteers for a dance challenge." Ethan's pulse skyrocketed. He had been navigating subtle attention, but now the spotlight was about to shine directly on him. He froze, caught between excitement and terror. The crowd started pointing, some laughing, some cheering, and the host's eyes scanned for participants. Melissa's gaze lingered again, and Ethan realized with horror that he might be chosen. Every instinct screamed to hide, to retreat, but retreat wasn't an option. The music pulsed, the crowd's energy surged, and Ethan had to decide: risk exposure and embrace the spotlight, or attempt to fade into the background, risking suspicion. Before he could react, the host pointed directly at him. "You, come on, join the challenge." The crowd erupted in cheers. Ethan's heart leapt into his throat. The eyes of coworkers, Melissa, and the entire party were now trained on him. The weight of attention pressed down like a physical force, every step, every sway, every gesture under scrutiny. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. The heels felt heavier now, the dress tighter, the pressure almost suffocating. And yet, there was no turning back. Stepping into the spotlight, Ethan allowed the thrill to override fear. Each movement was deliberate, each step precise, as he embraced the persona he had created. Melissa clapped lightly, encouraging yet teasing, and Ethan felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps she wouldn't discover the truth. Perhaps this performance would solidify the fantasy. Yet the tension remained unbearable, the possibility of a slip, a revealing gesture, or a whispered comment always hovering at the edge of consciousness. As he danced, the reflective surfaces around the room, the polished floor, the mirrored walls, caught his image from multiple angles. He saw himself multiplied, a dazzling figure in red, heels clicking, hair perfect, makeup flawless. The exhilaration was almost blinding, a potent mix of fear, desire, and triumph. But just as he began to feel in control, the door at the back of the room creaked open unexpectedly. Ethan froze. A familiar shadow appeared, someone he hadn't anticipated, walking slowly toward the party. Every nerve in his body screamed danger. The threat of discovery had just become tangible, immediate, and unavoidable. Ethan's mind raced. Could he maintain composure? Could he survive the next few moments without revealing his secret? The crowd's cheers and laughter blurred into a chaotic symphony of anticipation and dread. Every glance, every step, every heartbeat now carried the weight of potential exposure. The room seemed to shrink around him, the lights brighter, the music louder, the crowd more intense. He was at the peak of suspense, teetering on the edge of revelation. And in that moment, Ethan understood the truth of transformation. It wasn't just about appearance or clothing. It was about courage, risk, and the exhilarating dance between who he was and who he dared to become. The unexpected figure at the back of the room moved closer, and Ethan's pulse surged violently. Every nerve in his body screamed warning. One misstep, one glance in the wrong direction, and everything, the careful illusion, the persona, the secret, could unravel in seconds. Melissa noticed the subtle shift in Ethan's posture and raised an eyebrow, curiosity sparkling in her gaze. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice light but probing. Ethan forced a smile, nodding, masking the sudden panic bubbling inside. "Yeah, just caught off guard," he murmured, trying to keep his tone casual while his hands tightened around the edge of his clutch. The figure drew closer. It was Tom, a senior colleague who had an uncanny ability to notice details others overlooked. Tom paused at the edge of the dance floor, scanning the room. For a moment, he seemed completely oblivious, chatting casually with another group. Ethan exhaled sharply, relief flooding through him. But the tension didn't dissipate entirely. Tom's presence was a reminder of the fragility of his secret. He tried to refocus on the music, letting the rhythm guide him, but the heels clicked with exaggerated awareness, every movement amplified under the scrutiny of the crowd. He felt as though the floor beneath him was a stage trap, each step a potential reveal. The exhilaration of performing under pressure mingled with dread. He was caught in a delicate balance of thrill and fear. Melissa leaned closer, her voice tinged with playful curiosity. "You're really killing it out here," she said, eyes sparkling with both admiration and intrigue. Ethan's heart skipped. Compliments were welcome, yet they heightened the danger. Each word, each glance, each subtle gesture was a test of composure, of whether he could continue the act without faltering. The music shifted again, slower now, drawing everyone closer into pairs for a coordinated dance move. Ethan's mind raced. Dancing with someone could expose him if he misjudged the steps, stumbled, or revealed too much. He scanned the crowd, noting the pairs forming and calculating the safest way to navigate the dance without risking discovery. Melissa extended her hand suddenly. "Care to dance?" she asked with a teasing smile. Ethan froze, his mind a whirlwind. Accepting meant proximity, movement, and interaction with someone perceptive. Refusing would look suspicious, drawing more attention than he wanted. His pulse hammered. Taking a deep breath, he placed his hand in hers, feeling the soft warmth of contact and the surge of tension that followed immediately. The dance began, slow and rhythmic. Ethan forced himself to focus on the music, on the steps, on the sway of his dress, and the balance of his heels. But awareness of Melissa's gaze never left him. Every glance she gave felt loaded with unspoken questions, curiosity, and intuition. He had to maintain perfection, not just in posture or steps, but in every microexpression, every gesture that could betray him. Suddenly, Tom's gaze swept across the room. He was closer now, moving toward the center, and Ethan felt his chest tighten. The reality of potential exposure became immediate. He was performing on a knife's edge, where one wrong movement, one falter in confidence, could reveal everything. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the hem of his dress, forcing composure and elegance into every motion. The room seemed to close in around him. The music, the cheers, the flashing lights, all heightened the suspense. Ethan was acutely aware of every detail, the reflection of himself in the polished floor, the subtle rustle of fabric as he moved, the click of his heels against the tiles. Each sound, each motion amplified the risk of being discovered, yet also intensified the thrill. Melissa leaned closer again, whispering, "You're incredible at this." "Really?" Ethan's heart raced, a mixture of relief, pride, and panic. Compliments reassured him, but they also brought him closer to exposure. The more she noticed, the more aware she became. Every word was a delicate balance of charm, poise, and deception. And then came the moment that sent shockwaves through him, a sudden, loud crash from the refreshments table. A tray of glasses toppled, sending crystal clattering across the floor. The crowd turned toward the sound. Ethan froze mid-step, heels digging into the polished tiles as adrenaline surged through his veins. This wasn't just noise, it was an immediate threat. Movement had to be precise to avoid slipping or drawing attention. Melissa's hand gripped his lightly, steadying him as the chaos unfolded. Her eyes sparkled with amusement and intrigue. "Careful," she whispered. Ethan's stomach tightened, realizing how fragile his balance was, both physically in heels and socially in his constructed persona. The sudden tension intensified every heartbeat. As the crowd reacted to the accident, Ethan saw an opening, a brief, unguarded moment where he could navigate away from potential exposure. He pivoted carefully, sliding gracefully between clusters of people, each step calculated to maintain elegance and confidence. The thrill of escaping detection was nearly intoxicating, yet he knew it was temporary. The night was far from over, and the dangers were not fully behind him. A subtle whisper from behind. "I didn't know you had moves like that." Ethan froze, the words dripping with curiosity and subtle suspicion. He turned slightly, meeting Melissa's eyes. The smile she gave was playful, teasing, but there was something else in her gaze, an intuitive spark that made his heart hammer. Could she see the truth? Was his secret safe for now? Or was discovery imminent? Every fiber of his being screamed for control, composure, and precision. He adjusted posture, straightened shoulders, and let the music guide him. Every movement became a delicate performance, a dance of survival as much as of confidence. The heels pressed sharply into his feet, reminding him of the vulnerability inherent in this persona, and yet that vulnerability only heightened the exhilaration. The chaos of the party, the heat of attention, and the proximity of perceptive coworkers created a storm of tension that Ethan rode with calculated elegance. Every step, every sway, every glance was a negotiation between fear and thrill, secrecy and exposure, identity and persona. And then, the final escalation. Melissa leaned in, voice low, almost conspiratorial. "You're hiding something, aren't you?" Ethan froze mid-step. The words were soft, almost teasing, yet loaded with weight. His chest tightened, every muscle tensing as the room seemed to hold its breath. The revelation was imminent. The suspense reached a fever pitch, every possibility of exposure now a tangible, electric threat. The music pulsed through the room, heavier now, almost like a drumbeat syncing with Ethan's racing heart. He moved with deliberate precision, heels clicking on the floor, but every step felt precarious. His breath hitched as Melissa's teasing words replayed in his mind. "You're hiding something, aren't you?" Every nerve in his body screamed alert, warning him that his carefully constructed world was moments away from collapsing. Across the room, Tom had subtly shifted, moving closer to the dance floor with an almost predatory awareness. Ethan's pulse spiked. He could feel every eye around him now, their glances magnified by the bright overhead lights. He was no longer just participating in a party. He was performing on a stage where exposure was inevitable. Then it happened, a sudden interruption that sent a jolt through him. One of the office doors creaked open wider than usual, and a familiar figure appeared in the hallway. Isabella's best friend, someone from outside the office party, unexpectedly arriving for a visit, stepped in, scanning the room with curiosity. Panic surged through Ethan. The one person who could see through the illusion was here. He froze mid-step, heels pressing sharply into the floor, body rigid. The music swirled around him, but his awareness tunneled into the danger at the door. Melissa's hand on his arm steadied him, but the weight of potential discovery pressed down like a physical force. If Isabella's friend saw him now, all of his careful planning, every hidden hour of practice, every meticulous step, would be undone. Trying to maintain composure, Ethan forced a laugh, tilting his head toward Melissa, pretending casual charm. "Can you believe this crowd?" he said, voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through his veins. Melissa smiled knowingly, but the twinkle in her eyes hinted that she suspected more than she let on. Ethan's stomach tightened. The delicate line between admiration and suspicion was razor-thin. He tried to move away subtly, navigating through the cluster of dancing coworkers. But the unexpected visitor advanced, slowly scanning the room. Panic and thrill collided, creating a heady, intoxicating tension. Each step in his heels felt amplified, every sway of his dress magnified, every breath a test of control. He was dancing on a knife's edge between discovery and exhilaration. And then, the unthinkable, a misstep. One heel caught on the polished floor, sending a brief jolt through his body. He stumbled slightly, arm brushing against a nearby coworker, whose gaze lingered for just a moment too long. Ethan's heart thudded violently, the fear of exposure now almost suffocating. He forced himself upright, adjusting the dress, smoothing every crease, and stepping deliberately into rhythm with the music. Melissa leaned closer, whispering, "You're handling this so well. I almost can't tell." The words were meant as a compliment, but to Ethan they felt like a threat. The closer she got, the more aware he became of the fragility of his secret. One casual comment, one observant glance, and the truth could spill. The visitor from the hallway had now stepped fully into the room. Isabella's friend scanned the crowd, and for a terrifying heartbeat, their eyes locked on Ethan. The room seemed to slow, the music fading into silence in his mind. Every heartbeat was deafening, every breath trembling with the possibility of exposure. Ethan's mind raced. He could retreat, step out of the spotlight, but the crowd's energy and the ongoing dance challenge left no easy escape. He could feel the sweat pricking his skin, the tightness of the dress, the strain of heels amplifying his vulnerability. He was trapped in the brilliance and danger of his transformation, suspended between triumph and revelation. Melissa's gaze never wavered, and Ethan noticed a flicker of curiosity and understanding in her expression. It was as if she were silently acknowledging his secret without revealing it, a delicate balance between observation and discretion. The sensation was both comforting and terrifying, a reminder that every relationship now carried stakes beyond mere social interaction. Suddenly, a hand lightly touched his shoulder. Ethan spun, heart hammering, expecting an accusation or recognition. Instead, it was a friendly coworker, completely unaware, laughing and asking if he wanted another drink. The tension broke for a moment, adrenaline still roaring, but relief washing through him. He realized just how close he had come to exposure. One more misstep, one more glance from the wrong person, and everything would have unraveled. The room's energy intensified, and the dance reached its final crescendo. Ethan allowed himself to sink fully into the rhythm, every movement a mix of calculated elegance and instinctive grace. He was performing at the edge of panic, adrenaline, and exhilaration, every moment amplified by the proximity of potential discovery. And then, the twist. Isabella herself appeared, unexpectedly early, a surprise visit that no one anticipated. Ethan froze completely. His mind raced in a storm of fear and anticipation. Every step, every movement, every carefully maintained gesture was now under direct threat. The secret he had safeguarded for weeks, the persona he had crafted, hung precariously in the balance. The music swelled one last time, and the crowd's eyes followed Ethan as he navigated the dance floor. Every nerve screamed. Would he be exposed? Would Isabella recognize the truth before he could react? The suspense was unbearable, the tension almost tangible, as Ethan teetered on the razor's edge of revelation. Ethan's stomach twisted as Isabella's eyes locked onto him. The party's music faded into the background of his mind, replaced by the deafening thump of his own heartbeat. He felt every inch of the heels beneath him, the constriction of the dress, and the full weight of his secret pressing down like a physical force. Every breath became a battle, every blink a potential giveaway. Melissa, standing just beside him, sensed the rising tension and leaned slightly closer. "Everything okay?" she asked softly, her voice teasing but carrying an unspoken understanding. Ethan forced a smile, but his hands shook subtly as he smoothed the fabric over his hips. "Yeah, just enjoying the party," he murmured, each word strained with effort to sound casual. The crowd swirled around him, oblivious to the drama unfolding at its center. But to Ethan, every glance from a coworker was magnified, every cheer or laugh like a spotlight illuminating his precarious situation. He realized that for weeks he had managed his secret meticulously, but now it was on the verge of unraveling, and the consequences could be catastrophic. Isabella moved closer, her expression a mixture of amusement and curiosity. She didn't immediately confront him, which made the tension even worse. The uncertainty of her reaction gnawed at him, every second stretching into eternity. Ethan's mind raced with strategies: how to divert attention, how to stay composed, how to prevent the truth from slipping out. The dance challenge reached a critical moment. The DJ called for participants to showcase their best moves, and the crowd's energy surged. Ethan felt the weight of the moment pressing down. One misstep, one faltering movement, could reveal the carefully constructed persona. He took a deep breath, letting rhythm guide his body while keeping his expression controlled, poised, and flawless. Melissa's hand brushed against his, a subtle anchor amid the storm of attention. Her eyes sparkled with amusement, yet the intensity of her gaze hinted she knew more than she let on. Ethan's heart raced. The thrill of being recognized for his elegance and charm collided with the terror that his secret could be exposed at any moment. Suddenly, a playful nudge from a coworker caused him to stumble slightly. The room seemed to contract around him, the sound of heels slipping, the swish of fabric, the collective murmur of the crowd. Ethan's breath caught. He recovered quickly, turning the stumble into part of the dance, but the adrenaline surged, making every movement feel magnified. Isabella stepped even closer, and Ethan could feel the heat of scrutiny radiating from her. Her lips curved into a knowing smile, teasing yet sharp, and Ethan realized the truth might not be far from being discovered. His chest tightened. The suspense was unbearable. Could he maintain control? Could he navigate the crowd, the heels, the attention, and Isabella's gaze without faltering? And then came the twist, a loud, unexpected interruption. The office manager, not aware of Ethan's dual identity, announced an impromptu toast to celebrate the team's achievements. All eyes turned toward the center of the room, and Ethan realized he was now directly in the spotlight. Every gaze, every flash of the overhead lights, every camera phone pointed in his direction intensified the danger. The toast began, and Ethan's knees threatened to buckle under the tension. He adjusted his stance, keeping shoulders back, head high, and smile in place. But the room seemed charged with electricity, a tangible sense that one wrong word or glance could shatter the illusion. He felt the collective anticipation pressing on him like a vice, every heartbeat echoing the fragility of a secret. Melissa whispered again, "You're incredible, don't let them see a thing." The words were a lifeline, but also a reminder. The higher the praise, the closer he was to being noticed, to having his secret unveiled. Ethan nodded slightly, forcing calm over the torrent of panic coursing through him. Then, it happened, a high-pitched laugh from Isabella, followed by a teasing comment. "You're really full of surprises tonight." Ethan froze. The tone wasn't accusatory, yet it carried an edge that made his blood run cold. Every instinct screamed danger. He could feel the gaze of the entire room focusing on him, the thrill of performance mingling with the terror of exposure. He tried to move away subtly, weaving through the crowd, but the momentum of the dance and the pressure of attention made every step a challenge. His heels clicked sharply against the floor, the dress swaying with each movement, and every flicker of a smile or glance felt amplified. He was performing flawlessly, yet every fiber of his being was tense, aware that the line between secrecy and revelation had never been thinner. A sudden accidental brush of arms with Isabella sent a shiver through him. His mind raced. Did she suspect? Was this the moment everything would come crashing down? The music, the crowd, the lights, all blurred into a dizzying whirl of sensation. He was caught in the perfect storm of adrenaline, fear, and desire, teetering on the edge of discovery. Then Melissa's hand found his again, gripping gently, a silent anchor. Her eyes met his, conveying both understanding and reassurance. Ethan exhaled slowly, letting a fraction of composure return. But the tension remained, a simmering energy that refused to dissipate. He had survived the immediate threat, but the night's climax was not yet over. At that moment, a subtle but unmistakable signal, the DJ flicked the lights toward the crowd, highlighting Ethan in a dazzling beam. The room seemed to hold its collective breath. Every eye now fell on him, every movement under scrutiny, every detail of his persona exposed to potential judgment. Ethan's chest tightened, palms slick, And yet beneath the fear, there was a thrilling spark, the intoxicating rush of being fully seen, fully transformed, and fully alive. The spotlight hit Ethan squarely, and the room seemed to shrink around him. Every pair of eyes locked onto his figure, heels clicking, dress swaying, makeup flawless. He felt the weight of their attention pressing down like a tangible force. His chest tightened, and his stomach twisted into a knot. For weeks he had rehearsed, practiced, hidden, and perfected every detail, but now the stakes were higher than ever. Melissa's hand brushed his lightly, a subtle reassurance. "You're doing amazing," she whispered, her voice low, teasing and intimate. Her proximity both calmed and unnerved him. Her awareness of his secret made him hyper-conscious. Ethan forced a confident smile, though inside, panic coiled like a snake. Isabella had stepped closer, her eyes sharp and curious. Her earlier playful comments had shifted subtly, a glint of intuition now sparkling behind the amusement. "I've never seen you like this before," she said softly. The words, innocuous on the surface, carried the weight of potential discovery. Ethan's throat went dry. One slip, one unintended gesture, and everything would unravel. The music shifted into a dramatic crescendo, drawing the crowd into a swirling finale. Ethan moved with deliberate precision, each step measured, each sway calculated. His heels pressed painfully against the polished floor, every nerve on edge. He was performing at the intersection of fear and exhilaration, every muscle taut with suspense. Then came the unexpected twist. Isabella extended a hand, inviting him toward the center of the dance floor. Ethan froze, heart hammering in his chest. A gesture meant for fun or flirtation now carried unimaginable risk. Stepping into her space meant direct attention, prolonged observation, and heightened danger. But refusing could raise suspicion. Either choice had consequences. Swallowing hard, he accepted, moving with cautious grace. The crowd's cheers blurred around him, their excitement both exhilarating and terrifying. Every glance from Isabella felt like a silent inquiry, and every step on his precarious heels was a test of skill and nerve. Suddenly, a mirror along the wall reflected his image, multiple versions of him, all perfect, all poised, all delicate. For a split second, Ethan froze, seeing both himself and the persona he had created. The reflection was intoxicating, but also a stark reminder. The person in the mirror could be exposed at any moment. The duality of his identity pressed on him, the thrill of transformation colliding with the terror of discovery. Melissa leaned closer, her voice almost a whisper. "You're breathtaking, but be careful." Her words lingered like a promise and a warning. Ethan felt a shiver of anticipation and fear. He realized that everything, the hours of practice, the secrecy, the excitement, and the vulnerability, had led to this moment. Then disaster, or perhaps fate, struck. One of his heels slipped slightly on the polished floor. Time seemed to stretch as he teetered, arms flailing ever so slightly. The crowd gasped, and all eyes followed. He managed to catch himself, steadying with a precise step, but the adrenaline surged in waves. His secret remained intact, but just barely. Isabella's eyes widened ever so slightly, a flicker of recognition crossing her expression before she masked it with amusement. Ethan's heart thumped violently, sweat prickling at his temples. He had survived the immediate threat, yet he knew the night's tension was unresolved. Every glance, every comment, every move still carried risk. The music faded, replaced by the chatter and laughter of the crowd. Ethan exhaled slowly, trying to calm his pounding heart. The thrill of victory mixed with the lingering fear of exposure. He had survived, but the danger hadn't vanished. It lingered like a shadow at the edge of every interaction. And then, the final suspenseful moment. Isabella leaned in close, voice low and teasing. "We need to talk later." Ethan froze, every nerve in his body on high alert. The words were simple, yet loaded with promise and threat. The audience was left with uncertainty. Would she discover his secret? Would everything unravel when they were alone? The camera pans over Ethan's reflection in the mirror one last time, poised, elegant, trembling, and alive with exhilaration. The heels, the dress, the makeup, they were all perfect, yet they were also symbols of vulnerability and transformation. The story ends on a cliffhanger, leaving the viewers desperate to know what happens next. The room buzzed with energy as laughter and music slowly filled the corners again. Ethan stood slightly apart from the crowd, catching his breath, feeling the adrenaline slowly ebb from his veins. His heels had survived, the dress remained perfectly in place, and his carefully maintained facade had endured every scrutiny, every teasing glance, every nearly disastrous moment.
For now, he was safe.
Yet, safety was fleeting. The tension between triumph and fear still lingered, like a shadow clinging to his every movement. He smoothed his dress instinctively, glanced down at his hands, and noticed how slightly they trembled. The thrill, the terror, and the exhilaration of the evening had left him exhilarated and exhausted at once. He realized he had never felt more alive, and never so exposed. Melissa approached, her steps measured, her smile knowing yet gentle. "You handled that incredibly," she said, voice soft but edged with curiosity. Ethan forced a small laugh, unsure whether he was relieved or terrified by her calm observation. "Thanks. I just tried to keep moving," he said, his voice betraying the mix of pride and lingering panic. "Keep moving," Melissa repeated with a teasing smirk, leaning slightly closer. "You made it look effortless, but I could see the tension. The way you were, it was intense. Very intense." Ethan's heart skipped. Her words felt like praise, yet beneath them was a weight, a hint that she saw more than she admitted. Every word from her carried layers, teasing the line between recognition and revelation. He exhaled slowly, letting the moment pass, and tried to focus on the celebrations around him. The party's laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the upbeat music filled the room, but Ethan's mind could not escape the gnawing anxiety. Isabella's words, whispered moments ago, echoed in his ears. "We need to talk later." The sentence, simple and casual to anyone else, felt like a ticking clock counting down to exposure, a delicate countdown of inevitability. Ethan's reflection in a nearby mirror caught his eye. The woman staring back at him, poised, elegant, radiant, was him, and yet not him. The dress, the makeup, the carefully chosen accessories, they were more than costume. They were a declaration of his hidden self, a bold expression of the duality he lived with every day. And yet, the reflection also reminded him of the fragility of the illusion. One careless glance, one misstep, one word from the wrong person, and the carefully constructed persona could collapse. He felt a subtle pressure at his chest, a reminder that the night's climax wasn't over. Isabella's gaze had lingered, her presence undeniable, and the weight of curiosity pressed on him like a living thing. Ethan knew that whatever happened next, whether revelation or secret preserved, would shape everything that came after. Melissa leaned in one last time, whispering just loud enough for him to hear. "Careful, you're walking a fine line." The words sent a shiver down his spine. She wasn't threatening him, at least, not directly, but the insinuation was crystal clear. Tonight, everything had been risky, and the next steps could tip the balance. He allowed himself a final glance at the dance floor, at the crowd, at the glittering lights reflecting in every polished surface. He had survived every challenge, the stumbles, the whispers, the attention, the scrutiny. But survival didn't equate to safety. The risk had only grown, threaded through each smile, each word, each touch. He was caught in a moment that was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. Then, as if timed by fate, Isabella stepped closer again, her eyes locked on his with an intensity that made his stomach tighten. "We'll talk later," she repeated, this time letting the words linger like a question. Ethan felt the world tilt slightly. The party swirled around him, yet everything, the music, the laughter, the clinking glasses, faded into the background. All that remained was the silent question. Would she discover him? Would the secret he'd protected for so long be revealed in a single moment? Ethan's hand gripped the edge of his clutch, knuckles whitening. The heels pressed sharply into the floor, a constant reminder of vulnerability. The dress swayed gently, catching the glimmer of light in a way that made him feel both powerful and exposed. And in that fragile balance between triumph and danger, he realized something undeniable. Nothing would ever feel the same again. As the scene pulled back, capturing Ethan in the glow of the party lights, poised yet trembling, the camera lingered on his reflection. The audience could see the duality, the confident, radiant figure in heels and dress, and the anxious, vulnerable self beneath. And then the screen cut to black. The cliffhanger hung in the air. Would Isabella uncover the truth? Would Ethan's carefully constructed world survive the scrutiny of the one person whose judgment mattered most? The tension remained unresolved, leaving the audience desperate to find out what happened next.